Yep, it works. I was preparing for this week's sermon, and I sat down at my computer, and I read through our reading from Romans. If you have a bulletin, I invite you to turn to page 3 of your bulletin. And I will just reread a little part of that. But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been made known, to which the law and the prophets testify. This righteousness is given through faith in Jesus Christ to all who believe. There is no difference between Jew and Gentile, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and all are justified freely by His grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. God presented Christ as a sacrifice of atonement through the shedding of His blood to be received by faith. He did this to demonstrate His righteousness. And I'll stop there. Would anyone like to tell me what I just said? Oh, come on, now the hands should just fly up. I kind of have to chuckle because we have this celebration that we have this weekend of the Reformation, and we're grateful to Martin Luther because one of the things that he did, because of the timing of what he did and the timing of the printing press and his work with the German language, he created a language that people could read and easily learn, because most of the people in his time were illiterate. They were not taught how to read. Only the priests and other people, other teachers knew how to read. And their worship services were often in Latin. And so they didn't understand it anyway in Germany. And so I love that we have this chance now that, you know, I don't know, we probably have 10 of these at my house, different Bibles. I won't admit to how many actually get opened every week. And I'm thinking I'm probably the only one who does open one every day. Isn't that something when we have something available, we don't always use it, but when it's not available, we all want it. You know, like the new iPhone, we'll stand in line for the new iPhone to get what's out there. But when we get into it, sometimes we read this bit from Romans and we are overwhelmed. This language of law, accountability, justification, righteousness, sin, glory, atonement. We talked about this in our adult ed time. This is all language that we have all heard. But I would love you to tell me what those words mean. We get so used to hearing the jargon and we forget what it means. And when I was preparing for today, I read through book after book after book and read on some things online, and I read all of these wonderful theological statements that you all would have just looked at me and got glassy-eyed with, because I almost did. I went through the book of our reading from Romans, and I made 6 pages of definitions of those words. And so we kind of wonder why people aren't running to the church. If they come on Reformation Sunday, they're going, I didn't get a thing out of that one. What was she talking about? I don't know. You needed a scorecard. I almost need to hand out 6 pages of definitions. So I thought about that. I thought about righteousness, you know, this sense of being free from guilt. And our idea of what is law in the church. And so often we think of the 10 Commandments. Or even Reformation. Reformation is the idea of something being reformed and made better. Not just reformed, but actually improved. And then I thought about transformation, because that is another word that we often use in the church, that the word is meant to be transforming us, always changing us. And then atonement, to be made right with God. Or I was taught once to think of atonement at one with God. Break the word down. It's a great way to cheat. We use what we can. Justification. So often we think of justification as our relationship with God or with one another, making things right. And then I'm tired. Because all those big, heavy words, what does that mean in our lives? Why are we celebrating this Reformation and the availability of the word into the English language if we make it so difficult that we can't even understand it in some ways? When you look up the history of these words, most of them were first used, or the first instance of finding them used was the early 1500s, which is Martin Luther's time, by the way. I thought that was very interesting. He probably took the words and made them available because the people hadn't heard them otherwise. So I thought, how can I come up with another example of what was important to Martin Luther that he would put himself out there to almost be killed because the message was so important. The message was so important that he took his life into his own hands. Even his family's life was challenged at times. What was so important? He wanted people to know that they were loved. And they couldn't earn that love. Everything else in life we have to earn, right? I mean, we earn our paychecks. People decide if your behavior is okay, if you're invited to the next party at my house. We are judging each other all the time. And poor Luther couldn't figure out how he could ever be good enough for God. And he found out that through faith, because of grace, you didn't have to worry about that. And I thought, what is a good example, rather than these huge theological sentences, that I could use for that? And this is what I came up with. We are all 2-year-olds. Aren't we? In many ways, we are all 2-year-olds, especially here in the United States. We talked about this also at adulthood. The me generation. If I don't like something, I quit coming to church. If I don't like a group, I leave. I mean, we don't have to do anything. It's all about me. And I think about 2-year-olds, what's their favorite word? Mine. If it's yours, Jane, it should be mine. And if you think it belongs to your dad, it's still mine. And the only boundaries we put up are the ones we put up ourselves that include some of your stuff. I mean, we have this sense that we deserve everything. We are so much like 2-year-olds, aren't we? And can you imagine being God to a whole planet of 2-year-olds? My confirmation students and I talked about the Bible this last week, and we talked about how the Old and New Testament have 400 years between them. And it was a time where the people felt that they never heard from God. And so that made me think of being the mother of 2-year-olds at different times in my life. Every once in a while, I needed a timeout. The kids didn't. I did. You ever do that as a parent? Mom's going to the bathroom, don't really have to go, but I just need a time where I can be behind a closed door and I just can figure out what I'm going to do next because I give up. And we think about the Old Testament, God has been trying to work with people, and He's given us the 10 Commandments, and we can't even make it past the first one. Have no other gods before me, God says. Well, let me see. Our jobs, our egos, our kids and their sports. What other things? Our looks, making money. We have a whole list of things we put before God. That's not even getting to the second one about taking a day of rest. How many in our society, we used to have days when even the gas stations in the area weren't open. You prayed that you had enough gas to get anywhere you were going on Sunday. Are we ever shut down in today's world? We think we have to be going 24/7. We think we are the ones who make the world turn, and we've forgotten that it's God who makes the world turn. So obviously we don't do very well with those 10 Commandments. And that's what we were presented with in the Old Testament. Even with all the grace that came with them, we were like 2-year-olds. It's mine. I want to be like you, God. I want to eat from the tree of knowledge. I want to be in charge. We. And so I think of those 400 years between the Old and New Testament as God's time out. What am I going to do with these 2-year-olds? How am I ever going to communicate with them? And this is where salvation, redemption, atonement, justification, all of those big words come in. It's when Jesus came into our world as a baby. He came in at our level. He wasn't a God sitting up somewhere yelling down. He was on the floor, ground level with us. And His message was, I am never going to leave you. I love you. I am going to walk beside you with everything you go through. If you're a 2-year-old, I'm still going to love you. And I will continue to love you forever and ever. And I realize that you are going to be a 2-year-old until you're 95 years old. And I'm still going to love you. That, my friends, is the message that Martin Luther wanted us to hear. That is what grace is. That is what salvation is all about. That is love. Thanks be to God.